Hello everybody, my name is Player Negative, and today we are talking about something special. Animation here on YouTube. For a long time now, you probably can see that on this platform there are a lot of inspiring artists who have created many interesting things. But it wasn't always this way. Back in the earlier days of animation, there was a simple style that people used due to the limitations of tech, and despite how better things have gotten, people still seem to stick to this style. So today, I'm going to talk about why Flash and other classic animations have basically stayed timeless throughout the ages. So, let's get into it. But in order to be talking about it, I gotta look the part. So, if you would so kindly do your stuff, animator. Perfect. Back during the earlier days of the internet with animation, people didn't have access to most of the tools we have nowadays. There was no Blender, there was no Adobe Photoshop, there was only Flash Animation, MS Paint, and a few other basic programs. And before YouTube was the main spot for all these animations, most of them would show up on a place called Newgrounds. But a certain form of animation and a certain program managed to stay the test of time despite its near deletion. It was a simple app that existed in the strangest place you would never expect. A Nintendo console. I am of course referring to Flipnote hatenna. Nintendo partnered with a simple Japanese tech company called Hatenna to create a Flipnote program for the DSi and a site online where people could submit their animations, all represented with the icon of this cute little frog. I mean, just look at this little thing. Ain't it adorable? Anyways, even though this program had very limited colors and tools, people still figured out creative ways to work with those tools in order to create some pretty impressive animations. Here's a few just to give you an example of what I'm talking about. They had simple tutorial animations showing you what was capable with limited amount of colors and animation. YouTubers today still use the design to create their avatars or their types of animation styles using various simple techniques. However, some of the animations are a little, that. And who could forget this guy who's iconic for the simple joke, "Let's go gambling!" Alright, buddy, you should probably stop now. Dude, you should stop. Stop. Seriously, stop! And they managed to animate all of that on a simple screen smaller than a phone. I can barely draw multiple frames of animation on my phone, and these guys, they had some of the best talent around. And some of the most unique things about the website were the fact that you could basically draw comments with interesting pictures on it to display your opinion on things, which is honestly a really cool gimmick, and I wish YouTube had something like that. However, because Nintendo is Nintendo, this was all very short-lived, and by March 2013, Flipnote hatenna was shut down many years prior on that very day. They were planning on creating a new Flipnote gallery for the 3DS, but however, plans of making it were only limited to Japan and Nintendo members, and also they immediately destroyed it after people in an unrelated 3DS SwapNote app was caught getting a kid to send them certain pictures, so to speak. From there, Nintendo was scared of uploading this app of fear, the same with Flipnote. And on March 2013, Flipnote was killed off and swept under the rug. But do not get it twisted. People have learned to mod the 3DS and upload their animations on their computer onto YouTube. And the community of people who have been doing this, despite the harsh shutdown of Flipnote hatenna, are still thriving. And some of the animations are pretty interesting. And I would definitely recommend you check out themselves. Proving to people that a love of passion and a willingness to create can always surpass a level of corporate greed if done right. But that's not all I'm planning on talking about. So, if you probably noticed by looking at my avatar, I'm kind of a stick figure with a jacket on right now. And part of that comes from the fact that I've been practicing working in animation to try to give my videos a little more life to it, so to speak. And for that, I've been using a program called Flipnote, similar to Hatenna, but a little more different and a lot more modern. I've been practicing doing walk cycles since walking is one of the hardest things to animate. And similar to Hetena, despite its limitations, people have created a lot of interesting animations with just flip a clip alone, as well as other animation software like Adobe Photoshop. A good example is my good friend Zipimations. Now, his iconic look of similar to that of the Newgrounds says. You can tell based off the basic lip syncing how the characters' designs are pretty similar. Despite that, though, he still has a lot of skill with his animations, despite its simplistic and generic look. And even though the character is kind of stiff in a few areas, that's part of the charm of the design. Especially considering the fact that this character is drawn a whole lot better than mine and is more likely to be rigged than hand-drawn. Like, really taking it in, you can see all the interesting detail he put into the design, like the water, the blur effects, and the fact that he allowed the character to have a nice shaking quality with the frame. This is really well done, and you really gotta hand it to all the hard work he puts into this, because, if I'm truly being honest, I don't even think I could obtain up to that level. So generally his channel has a lot of interesting, well-animated videos. Sometimes he has commentary videos, but he honestly does it a good job. Despite the fact of how simplistic everything looks, people still enjoy his videos. And you may ask yourself, but why? How is it that videos that have so little detail in so little time are so well praised? It's because people like short vertical content? No. Part of it, but maybe not the main reason. It's because when a character has a very stylized design, it allows them to be very recognizable. A good example is Mickey Mouse. Despite the fact the character is nothing more than 3 circles, you can add a lot of style and design to it, and as long as a character's style is recognizable, they can become very iconic and interesting. Also, notice how Mickey Mouse's body is comprised of solid colors, specifically all black, yet parts of his body like his shoes and his gloves allow you to tell what is where, and so they don't get lost in the sea of black. This is an element design that Zippy actually has himself. Notice how Zippy also has a similar thing with Mickey Mouse. He has solid colors in certain parts of his body to contrast the background of the blue of his shirt and himself. And many YouTubers follow this concept, whether it's a sequelist when they're doing their review of Mega Man X with their avatar, or Kerbo, who is basically a simplified version of Kirby from a series of videos called There's Something About, insert video game name here, who basically later on evolved in his own character, which you can see in these little animations. Yeah, this guy found a hit on his hands. And why the animation itself isn't for everyone, there's a lot of interesting people who still use it. But apart from this simplistic animation, one thing people gravitated towards was stick fights. Now when I say stick fighter, you're probably thinking of something like on the lines of Alan Becker, but to be fair, he was not the first, and most stick fighting started on Flipnote Hatenna, with one particular person by the name of Boss. Now, sadly, I couldn't find anything on him on YouTube as I was scrolling through a few things, but I did manage to find an animation made by him and a few of his colleagues, particularly one of the few other Flipnote Hatenna animators, The Ghost, and this is the video so far. I cut out audio for copyright reasons, just because last time I included a song or audio, I got copyright blocked. So, here's a small example of what I got here.
And animation like that led to a pretty good inspiration for tons of earlier animators. Now you're probably asking yourself, why would you use a stick figure? If you can make stuff that well, why would you waste your time with a guy who's literally a few sticks and a ball? Well, the reason for that is quite simple. Due to the fact they don't have to focus on characters and specifically anatomy or detail, it allows them to plan a fight scene easier and animate faster and more efficiently. And stick figures are basically the gateway to animation. I myself have been practicing with stick figures because I want to try to learn how to do 2D animation and 3D at the same time rather than just sticking with one or the other, which I'm going to make a whole video in and of itself talking about that whole topic. To be fair, all animation has its own strengths and weaknesses, and the same can be said for art. I mean, considering we don't talk about the two-letter elephant in the room, if you know what I mean. Yeah.
So in conclusion, classic animation from Flipnote Hatenna has a sense of charm and interesting idea to it of the earlier days of the internet with flash animation and various skills done with it because of the charm and the simplicity allowed for a lot of imagination and creativity breathed into it. So I hope you enjoyed this video, and I'll see you later.